This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour is brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way. All at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Best, by the way, in the business. Great buying experience for me. And that service department, by the way, whether it's quick lane, inspections, routine, difficult, they handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. All right, we will get to several items with Adam Rittenberg in just a few moments and talk to him about what he saw on Saturday night, what he thought about the college football playoff, what he thinks about the Heisman. Now, look, Heisman voters do not give out their ballots. As you know, I don't give out my ballot beforehand, but just general thoughts on that area, because that's this week. That is this week. And that'll be Saturday night, I believe. Something I stopped watching a long time ago. I mean, it's a 1-hour show. Like, what are we doing? Just announce the winner. But maybe that's just me being impatient. All right, so let's bring in the outstanding Adam Rittenberg. Great to see you on Saturday night. Thank you also for the kind words. Greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, my friend. Yeah, it was an interesting game, and two teams that certainly belong in the college football playoff, and they are. So that's an exciting thing.
Yeah, what did you think of that game, the way it played? I know you and I were joking at halftime that the SEC game looked like the Big Ten, and the Big Ten looked like the SEC.
Yeah, and again, the league, it's hard to completely generalize.
Right.
And the SEC hasn't always been like super wide open in playmaking. Right. But the Big Ten certainly has had that reputation of being a more of a low-scoring, methodical type game, and both those teams had playmaking ability on offense. And I think for Penn State, even though you want to win the game, you come away encouraged by the fact that you were able to trade blows, especially after that first quarter, with a team that's used to kind of delivering them on a regular basis. And that's what I was worried about for Penn State going in was, can they outscore Oregon? Can they trade those blows with them?
Right.
And they were able to. They just weren't able to kind of get one more to really make it interesting. So, that game, I think in the future will be a lot more like the game we saw on Saturday because you're going to have always two really good teams with a lot of high-level athletes playing inside as opposed to in weather. So I think we're typically going to see that Big Ten championship game be a higher-scoring game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Especially, you're going to have 1 versus 2. It's going to be indoors. It makes a big difference. There's obviously been the debate about Alabama, SMU. It doesn't matter now. SMU is in. They're going to play here at Penn State. But what was your thought just on the general debate and SMU being included in the playoff, especially after what they did in the second half with Clemson?
Yeah, I think they showed in that second half what type of team that they've been most of the season. Very resilient team, an experienced team, a team that's used to winning a lot of games. That was something that I talked about with Rhett Lashley during the year is that his team isn't intimidated because it's a lot of older players. So moving into a new conference and being down in games or having to win a game like the Duke game where they had a ton of turnovers and still found a way, I think just speaks to kind of what type of locker room he has. So I was glad that they got in. I just don't see the point in expanding a playoff if you're going to keep a team that went undefeated out in its league. I know they lost the game to BYU, but that was with a different quarterback, and they really had earned their way in based on an 11-1 regular season. I mean, there could have been some weird tiebreaker that kept them out of the championship game. I don't know what it would be, but in theory, you have Indiana sitting there at 11-1, and you're putting them in. Why wouldn't you put SMU in? Why would you penalize them for making their conference championship game? So I think that was the right call. And while certainly Alabama and Ole Miss and South Carolina are capable teams in the college football playoff, ultimately you got to get it done during the regular season, and 3 losses is 3 losses. So I just don't think there's a whole lot of tears to be shed for a 9-3 team, regardless of what league it is, to be left out of the playoffs.
No, I completely agree with that. And again, I thought they did a good job with the conference championship games, the committee, because, look, you're the one out there risking another loss. You're the one out there risking an injury. Look at Carson Beck of Georgia, for example. And they didn't penalize you for playing in those games. I mean, I thought for them that showed everybody, at least it showed me something about what their thought process was.
Sorry, Steve, you just cut out for a second. What was the question?
I said that they did not penalize teams for playing in the conference championship games because you're the one out there risking a loss. You're out there also risking injury. For example, Carson Beck of Georgia, right? They end up losing him in that game. And I thought the committee did a great job of taking all those factors into account.
Yeah, definitely. I think for the most part, you're not going to see teams that are in that game penalized if they've essentially earned their way in. I mean, that was the whole debate with Georgia into the SEC championship was if they'd lost to Georgia Tech, then they would need to win it to play their way in. But once they beat Georgia Tech, I think there was an understanding that, even if they lost the SEC title game, they would have made it in. That would have been interesting to see what they would have done if they had lost the game and lost their quarterback, the committee, that is, with Georgia, because we saw what happened obviously with Florida State last year when Jordan Travis went out with the injury. It essentially cost Florida State a playoff spot. So, but Georgia won the game. They found a way, and they're obviously the number 2 seed in this thing.
Do you know what game you've been assigned to yet?
I will be at Notre Dame, for the very first on-campus game of the playoff. Indiana, going up to South Bend and all. Indiana affair, so excited for that one, and then certainly excited to see what goes on there in State College the following day. I mean, State College is always one of those places that when they announced this format, we all thought, wow, what a scene that could be, for a playoff game. We just haven't had this before, so I'm really, really excited. I've seen a lot of games at Notre Dame Stadium in my job over the years, from the Bush Push game to games against Ohio State, Michigan, and other USC games, the Clemson games. But I don't know if there's ever been a bigger game, at least in my career, that Notre Dame will host than the one next Friday.
I've always told people that college football kicks and screams its way into finally making progress. Man, I wish they had this years ago because, I mean, they haven't played a game yet, and I'm excited to see the games, especially with campus games. What about you? Yeah,
I really am. I think that this round, even though I'm excited for all of it, this particular round, is one of the reasons that you do this. We don't, no one falls in love with college football based on like a neutral site game. Maybe even a bowl game, maybe the Rose Bowl, some people do, but I think most of us are attracted to the sport because of it's being played on campus and the pageantry that's around those games and the students and the fans and the bands and everything. So, these are the settings in which the most important games should be played, in my opinion, and now we're finally able to get that. It's football is not a tournament sport like basketball is, and I think that the settings of of college football are as ingrained with the sport as really any sport, maybe more so than any sport. So I'm really, really looking forward to this round.
So you can't reveal your Heisman ballot because that's wrong. But what are some of the factors that you looked at when you were putting together your Heisman ballot?
Well, I think you always look at the candidate and that candidate's body of work, and where they play, who they've played against, the consistency. I try not to overweight one performance. So, if so-and-so has a career performance or two, that's great. But then if they didn't show up in some of the bigger games of the season, I'd be less inclined to vote for them. And so I think what's exciting about this group is that they've all been really consistent. I mean, if you look at Travis Hunter and how often he's made a play, whether it's on the defensive side, but especially as a receiver, his numbers have really spiked as a receiver. Ashton Jeanty, you can't find a bad performance he's had this year. Even in their loss to Oregon, no one's run the ball on Oregon like he was able to in that early game. If it wasn't for Cam Ward, Miami would probably be close to 500. That's how good he was, pretty much week to week for them. And then Dylan Gabriel has just been almost on autopilot. Really, really consistent player, and you saw how good he was in the Big Ten championship. Just plays like an adult. I mean, he is not. Sometimes we refer to these guys as kids. He is not a kid out there. He is a full-grown man who's seen a lot of college football and makes decisions and performs like he's been doing it for a really long time. And so I think it's a really nice pool of Heisman contenders. Don't have an SEC player in there, which is a little unusual. Do have a couple of quarterbacks, but I think the uniqueness of Hunter and in some ways Jeanty too. I mean, how often does a non-quarterback from a non-Power 4 program even get considered for this award? It's a really neat field.
Against Oregon, Jeanty ran for 192. With Henderson and Judkins, Ohio State as a team ran for 140. I mean, that's just giving you just one example. Like that one guy, he scored 29 touchdowns this year rushing, for goodness sake, 2,497 yards or some number like that. And people didn't really get a chance to see him that often. But, boy, when I watched him, man, you thought he was going to break it on every single play. I don't know what you thought when you watch him.
Yeah, for sure. He is, and again, I actually wrote about him last year. I did a couple of pieces on, kind of the best players you don't know about, and he was sort of thrust into a do-it-all role for Boise State and caught a lot of passes out of the backfield. So I knew the name, I knew the performance, but he just took it to another level this year. And even his style of not getting into a stance before he gets the ball, kind of adds to the mystique around him. But I was out there in Las Vegas for Big 12 and Mountain West Media Day, and Ashton had to do his own media day at a different hotel because he's not 21. He couldn't do it at the Circa, so he had his own media day, and man, he backed up the hype. They did a nice job promoting him, and look at where he is now.
Let me ask you something. You were talking about, like, this guy's a full-grown man and so forth. Some guys are staying longer in college. Now, some, do the 3 and out. I've got that. But some guys are staying longer in college, taking extra years and so forth. What do you think that's done for the quality of the sport?
I think it's improved it. I think the longer that you have, in college, especially when you're developing, even if it's at multiple programs, I think it just enhances the quality of the sport to have guys like Dylan Gabriel or his predecessor Bo Nix. I mean, Steve, I was at Bo Nix's first game back in 2019, and he and Oregon. He and Auburn rather outplayed Oregon, and led by Justin Herbert, by the way, who was the quarterback. So that's how long Bo Nix's career was, going from Justin Herbert's time to the current or last year rather. And so I think that position especially, it's something that can really help the sport when guys are around a little bit longer. But then there's other players who are obviously ready to make a jump and can go 3 and out. And Ohio State's had a number of them. over the years. And Michigan's obviously had a number of players. Will Johnson going to the NFL today. No big surprise there. So, but I think in general, it's better for a sport when good players hang around a little bit longer.
Is it my imagination that does each one of these 4 opening matchups feel like it's got like a lot of juice to it? I mean, that's what I see. I see 4 matchups like, well, I can't wait to watch that game. I can't wait to watch that game all the way through. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, if you're a diehard SEC fan and you're disappointed that the SEC only has a couple of teams in, then maybe you're not. But I mean, shoot, I followed SMU all year. I know how good they are. Indiana's been one of the best stories that I can remember in the last 20, 25 years. I mean, just to think of them being part of the college football playoff under this brash first-year coach and Kirk Cignetti, and getting to know Kurt and his family. So really all the games are even Clemson, a team that I'm not super high on Clemson, or right. but the bottom line is they made it. They won their conference, and now they take on a Texas team that is in the SEC and trying to show that it's capable of winning a national championship. So there really aren't any bad matchups. You're right.
Lashley is a guy that's done a great job at SMU, no question about that. They got a mixture of transfers and so forth. What do you like about him, and what makes SMU, in your opinion, very good?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that what makes them good is that they're a very balanced team. Like I do these future power rankings write-ups where we look at 3 years out for offense, defense, quarterback, team, and SMU was in it for everything. I mean, they're not just an offensive team, even though Rhett's background is on offense. And I think he's a guy that's been around, and he was obviously with Gus Malzahn at Auburn, and then he was with Sonny Dykes at SMU, and then he was with Manny Diaz at Miami, and he even went up to UConn for a year and was the offensive coordinator there. So he's a guy that has some varied experience, and he knows how to be a head coach, and I think his personality translates nicely to really to the team as a whole. So really solid team, and one that I know everyone's saying, okay, they're gonna struggle in the cold and 107,000. I'd be really surprised if this SMU team is intimidated by that setting. I think Penn State's better than them. I think Penn State will beat them, but I don't think it's because that they're going to be really scared of the environment.
Oh my goodness, they've won 11 games. They're used to winning. What kind of difference has Jennings made to them in your opinion? This will be the last question. I'll let you go.
Yeah, even before the year, Steve, I was talking to some coaches in the ACC, and I know the ACC wanted the coaches to bring their quarterbacks to media days, but there were a couple guys that took notice of the fact that SMU didn't just bring Preston Stone, but brought Kevin Jennings, and told me, hey, I think they're kind of setting that up for maybe a change. And obviously after the BYU game, they made that change, and Kevin's had a really good season, dual threat, very, very dangerous on the move. So Penn State's got to contain him as much in the pocket and try to make him win the game with his arm, because he's a really dynamic playmaker.
Adam, always a pleasure. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your valuable time today, and the audience appreciates it too. Thank you so much.
Yep, thanks, Steve. Great seeing you.
Adam Rittenberg from ESPN. By the way, the 2025 schedule is out for Penn State football. They will open with Nevada at home on August 30th, Florida International September 6th, Villanova September 13th. Then they get a bye. They're going to get 2 byes next year. They get a bye on the 20th. Then, and this is the one everybody already knew, they knew Oregon was going to be the opening conference game on the 27th. Then on the 4th, they go to the Rose Bowl to play UCLA. Then it's Northwestern at Penn State on the 11th. Okay? Then they have to go to Iowa on the 18th. Then they get a bye and they play at Ohio State. Then on the 8th, they get Indiana here. Then Penn State plays at Michigan State in Week 15. Then Nebraska is here on November 22nd. That's Senior Day. And then Penn State's final regular season game in 2025 will be at Rutgers. So that's the order with which they'll play. Nevada, Florida International, Villanova, bye. Oregon at home, at the Rose Bowl against UCLA, Northwestern at home, at Kinnick against Iowa, in Columbus against Ohio State, at home with Indiana, East Lansing to take on Michigan State, home with Nebraska, and then at Rutgers. So that's how it's going to stack up for the 2025 season. All right.
No road games to the second week of October, is that right?
This half hour has been brought to you by our good friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com as we continue here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Ho, ho, ho. Sunbury Motors Ford will help you get through the snow.
SMC has the area's largest selection of 4x4s with over 310 new and pre-owned trucks and SUVs priced as low as $13,968 with payments from just $259 a month with no money down. Sunbury Motors has over 40 new 2024 Escapes slashed $5,000. Plus get 1.9% financing for 60 months starting at just $27,650. SMC has 31 of the top-selling 2024 Ford Bronco Sports, discounted $47.50 and priced from only $28,315. Choose from over 45 new Ford F-150s with savings up to an amazing $12,616, and they start at just $46,549 with available 1.9% for 60 months. The Mertz family and all of Sunbury Motors would like to wish everyone a safe and joyous holiday season.
Who knows Santa? Sunbury Motors knows Santa.
Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
This half hour being brought to you by our good friends at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Imports, domestics, microbrews, the best selection of beer anywhere. Wine coolers, water, soft drinks, snacks. They roast their peanuts fresh and out every day. 6 great flavors of slushies. And the pickle bar, led by the Barrels and the Dills, indeed second to none. It is all at Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. Great to have you on the show today, and great to have with us on the show as well the outstanding Mike Poorman. Mike, welcome back. Great to have you with us.
It's great to be here. You know, Barrels and Dills are both so good, they got first-round buys in the playoffs.
And they earned them. I'd like to point out they earned it. So let's start with the fact that there's going to be a playoff game in Beaver Stadium. I did not have the heart to tell Rich Phillips, the play-by-play voice of SMU, when I talked to him earlier today, that spot he's sitting in won't be there in about a month. But to have this game at home, something that has never happened in the history of the building, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's terrific. You know, I went for a walk the other day, and there were still a few piles of snow, not very high, around Beaver Stadium. It made me think how high those piles will be. But I have to tell you, the other thought, I've been working on this, is comparing SMU and Penn State. The biggest crowd SMU played before this year was 61,000.
Right.
They're in for the shock of their life.
Well, they're all going to be there wearing white. What kind of response have you at least been able to gauge on tickets for this game for fans? Those who said yes, they want to keep their tickets for the game, and those who have also bought into it.
It's a mad scramble. I've been hearing from everybody, and the folks who are season ticket holders who have theirs are thrilled, and the folks who want to come in for a one-off, they're scrambling, is what I hear. My answer is always probably the same, maybe not the same as yours, but I'm not in the ticket business, and I'm glad that's really the case in 10 days hence.
Oh, my goodness. I'm so glad I'm not in the ticket business, believe me. Tickets and parking, right? I had a guy call me today. He says, what about the parking situation? I said, I don't know. Look at me. I'm lucky I have a space. What are you talking about? The path to get here, 11 wins. People can debate certain elements of scheduling and so forth, but how difficult, in your opinion, is it, Mike, to win 11 games in today's college football environment?
Well, you've heard it for almost 10,000. I don't know, how long has Franklin been here? But I don't think his 1-0 mantra has ever been truer, and we've seen it this year. Look, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Alabama lost twice to 6-6 teams. I think the fact that they have focused on the business at hand, in this day and age, with NIL, transfer portal, paychecks, parity, playoffs, I think it's and I'm not a super cheerleader, but I think it is an amazing coaching job for them to be consistent from week to week.
They're going to get, in the end, 2 consensus All-Americans. They will be Abdul Carter at defensive end and Tyler Warren at tight end. Let's start with Carter, because he changed positions and the dynamics of what he does changed as well. What was your opinion on his season and how he went about it to get to this point?
Well, I tell you what, it was like one of those time-lapse cameras, Steve, and even to the point where the other night, where he's not a true linebacker, he's not a true edge, but there were downs that you called where he was playing middle linebacker. I mean, the guy is an athlete, and I know everyone compares him to Micah Parsons, but he has quickly evolved into that, very quickly. I think that's the biggest surprise, how much he has not only developed into an edge, but a Swiss Army knife.
And we know that Warren has played literally 9 different positions during the course of the season for Penn State. When you watched him play this year and how Andy Koltenick wanted to use him, what was that experience like for you on a weekly basis following Tyler Warren around?
Well, here's the thing about Tyler, and I don't usually talk about these things, as you probably don't, because we have some of these kids in the classroom. Yeah. But since it's a really positive thing, Tyler is a great student, a locked-in, focused, kind of quiet student. And James has referenced that in a lot of different ways this year. Tyler is a student. He's a student of the game. His dad played college football with Trace McSorley's dad. It's not only in his DNA, but it's in his playbook. He's a super smart guy, so when you go, okay, here's a new play, this is what you're going to do. And by the way, I'm not sure has been running college football in the last 25 years. He's the guy who can think and make it happen and then be nonplussed about it. I think that's his biggest strength, is he goes about his business in a smart, methodical, thoughtful, consistent way. That's a long answer.
No, that's fine. It's a long-form interview, so it's perfectly fine. Before we get to the actual playoff itself, they did release the 2025 order of teams in the schedule. Anything that stick out to you about the order with which Penn State's going to play their games? There will be 2 bye weeks again next year.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of 2 bye weeks. And this is the thing that struck me was when they released it, I think they released it Saturday, was the Oregon is in Beaver Stadium on September 27. That's, I think, this immediately came to mind, too. There's not going to be any debate about when the whiteout is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good for so many reasons. It's devolved into something that is, media, broadcasting, money. I love to see the purity back. Biggest opponent at home, it's who it is. And for me, I was pretty excited that there's that line in the sand. This is the deal. And then you can tentpole the rest of the season, home schedule around that.
Yeah, I mean, no question. So they were able to do that. 3 non-con games, then the bye, then Oregon, then in the middle they've got another bye, and then they finish out after that. All right, so that's 25. The point at hand, what do you think of the 4 matchups on the opening weekend of the college football playoff? What intrigues you about each one?
Well, everybody says Tennessee is the one ripest for an upset, and I don't know. I would ask you this question: is Indiana and Notre Dame really just by happenstance? I mean, the state of Indiana championship. That's really intriguing. That's really intriguing to me. That it's almost seems manufactured for television.
Well, look, I mean, television plays a big role in it. I mean, the reason Penn State, my goodness, is going to be playing at noon on the 21st is they don't want to go head-to-head with the Steelers at 4:30. And why is Texas playing the second game that afternoon is because they don't want them going head-to-head with the Houston Texans at night. In other words, they're trying to keep the college football, in the same state, away from each other, and it didn't matter about who they're playing. They wanted Notre Dame in prime time on opening night at home. I think that played a role in it. That's my opinion.
Oh no, I mean absolutely. And I don't have a problem with any of that because he who makes the gold rules. And if you sign these massive contracts and they're filtering down to the players, you're going to play when TV wants you. I always kind of laugh at people getting mad at Big Noon. Well, the ratings tell you to play the big games at Big Noon, and if you want everything else, you got to do what they say.
Right. No, exactly right. What about the other matchups? Texas, Clemson, Penn State, SMU, Notre Dame, Indiana, and Ohio State, Tennessee. You mentioned which one could be ripe for an upset. So, what do you think about the matchups? And, quote, did the committee get it right with what they did?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you can't have 3 losses and 2 of them be the 6-6 teams. I have to tell you, it's kind of interesting when you go back to, Dabo, a guy who's won, 2 national championships? He's an underdog. He's anti-portal. He's this lone wolf, and he's become this massive underdog, and maybe in the whole bracket, maybe even more than the SMUs and Arizona States and Boise States of the world. They have turned Dabo into this likable figure. And then, SMU, you know this already, in some ways their offense is Oregon light. And I'll say what everyone else says. Penn State's bracket is great. I mean, after the Fiesta Bowl, I'm not sure if they're playing Penns Valley or Bald Eagle, but it's a pretty good path.
Yeah, without question. And what do you think this does? I mean, Penn State's not going to make money off of this because the college football playoff controls the tickets and so forth. But what do you think this does for the town, for this area, on a commencement weekend, no less?
That's a great point. Penn State does get the concessions money, and they do get the parking money. Yep. But, yes, there was a story on a local website that yours truly writes for, and it was a very good story where the downtown leaders were saying, look, come down, do your Christmas shopping early. Next weekend is going to be crazy, and it is. And I got to tell you is that everyone from Lions Pride to Rapid Transit to Family Clothesline, they're going to be selling anything and everything they have white. I mean, that stuff does not go in the back room for another year. It is fabulous, and we're not even talking about what it's going to do for the hotels as well, Steve.
Yeah, no question about that. And again, hotel space may be at somewhat of a mini premium around here because of commencement weekend. People had booked their commencement rooms months ago, knowing now it's not as extensive as the spring, but you and I both know there's a number of people that are graduating on the 22nd out of here. All right, so we've gone through all of that. This new era of college football, portal, NIL, house settlement money starting next year, playoff. What are you comfortable with right now, Mike? And what are some parts? Are there any parts of this that make you uncomfortable?
Wow, Steve, that's a really. I mean, these have been good questions. That's a great question. I'm not comfortable with the hidden money.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about professional sports, you know what everyone makes. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't know what the starters or backups or people coming in make, and I think people would be surprised. They will be next year on what the compensation level is, and with compensation comes expectations. And I have to tell you that I'm okay. I believe in the free hand of Adam Smith. I believe that the game really, in many ways, is the players, and they should be compensated. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Where I'm concerned somewhat is that they are professional athletes because they're getting paid. Yeah. I'm concerned about what happens to the academic side of things. The Tyler Warrens of the world are going to handle their business the right way. I'm concerned once you're making six figures as a second or third year player or a first year player, are you showing up for class? Are you creating a whole nother caste system in the academy? That may be my biggest worry, Steve.
Yeah, maybe no question. You do get concerned about that because it's still a university, and you are setting yourself up for life if you do it the right way, because only 2 to 3% go to the next level. Do you think there should be some level of federal government involvement, or do you think there should be collective bargaining to get reins in on what we're seeing?
Well, I think there will be collective bargaining. I mean, literally the House settlement and two of the major figures are putting forth the idea of recognition of a labor union. There will be a labor union for college athletes, especially basketball and football. And the National Labor Relations Board now they're on their third year of saying they will support that, and they're the overall federal organization. It not only makes sense, it's a law, so that will come. And then also, once you have a union will supplant in many ways because it's collective, and you use the right word, it's collectively bargained, so that could circumvent or at least push off in the federal courts Title IX. Because once you collectively bargain, you give up those federal rights there's still federal laws for labor, but that would supersede Title IX. That's going to help, and that's going to happen.
The fact that we have a lot of older players playing the game today, we just saw Dylan Gabriel make his 60-second start at Oregon. Cam Ward is somebody who has moved around Washington State, eventually to Miami. These guys are Heisman finalists. What do you think that has done for the game, pro and con, in your opinion?
Oh, it's made it a better game. I mean, these are great players. Look at, you see it. Devon J. Thomas has always been good, but, he had, even the other night he's fun to watch, and he's a real student, by the way. I mean, he's a great player, a terrific personality, but he's in year 6, so I'm not sure he's going to have an NFL career. He'll get into a camp, but it has made the better at a higher level. And then it's given these folks who may not be an NFL player a chance to continue to play, a chance to make some money, a chance to develop a career. Devon's a great example. Nick Dawkins is a great example. You know them. They're fabulous students, people, and they have their career off the field continues to grow. So in that sense, they're great opportunities. The game is better, and for the right people who approach it the right way, it's even more opportunity, which I'm in favor of.
Mike, thanks so much. Always appreciate your time. Enjoy the conversation very much. Audience loves hearing from you.
All right, thanks, bud. Take care.
Thanks. Mike Poorman, statecollege.com. By the way, congratulations to a friend of mine. That is Tom Hamilton, the play-by-play voice of the Cleveland Guardians. He has won the Ford Frick Award and will go into the Baseball Hall of Fame next year. So well-deserving. I've got to know Tom really well over the years when he did a lot of BTN basketball. Tom made a lot of trips in here to State College, and plus I saw Tom so much on the road. And he's, as a person and as a father, by the way, I mean, he's so dedicated to his boys and his family. I can't say enough great things about him. As a broadcaster, my goodness. And I say this with all due respect to the Yankees broadcasters. They do a fine job in the whole thing. But I was doing a Thursday night talk show over at the field, and then I went over to watch my granddaughter do gymnastics, which is very close to the field, the complex. And I'm driving home that night, and the Yankees were taking on the Guardians in the playoffs. And I made sure I found Tom. Why? Because Tom's just that good. He makes each game an entity unto itself. He makes each game exciting. He brings great insight, and he earned the Ford Frick Award. Congratulations to Tom Hamilton. Well deserved. This half hour brought to you by Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street in Sunbury, the beverage supermarket. You're on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection, imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you, and thank you for your years of patronage.
The holidays are a time of year to celebrate and reflect. Reflect on the past year, a year filled with challenges and uncertainty. Uncertainty that bred resilience and hope. Hope for healing, change, new beginnings, and unity. United as one people, one community, by one mission, to safeguard and protect what matters most. From all of us at Purdy Insurance, we wish you health, happiness, and joy this holiday season, and success in the new year.